Hey mamas, I am Lacey, your lactation counselor, and you're listening to the Early Motherhood Guide podcast, where motherhood is simply supported. And today I have the opportunity to talk with Maria Mingle. I said it right, right? And so Maria, you are from Milk and Honey, the breast milk jewelry company. Why don't you introduce yourself a bit more?
Okay, so I'm Maria. I have three kids, three little girls, and I co-own Milk and Honey Jewelry with my business partner, Meghan. And we've been open for about 4.5 years. And we live in Maryland, but our business is entirely online. So we don't have like a storefront or anything like that. But yeah.
Nice. Okay, so you obviously, I'm assuming you breastfed your kids. So
Fair.
what was your breastfeeding journey like? And was your experience different with any of your kids?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to some extent it was different with all of them. Although I do feel really blessed and lucky that none of my experiences were incredibly stressful or hard. Like, I think overall it was much smoother than, let's say, maybe even average.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean it was without stress and without lots of a really high commitment level, as I'm sure you know. Whenever my first daughter was born, I felt very like in tune with motherhood. And I felt really like, wow, I'm doing all of these things right. I just feel like I'm just doing such a great job. And I know that sounds braggy or arrogant now, but time has shown that I learned to be a little bit more humble as I began having more children. Because while the first breastfeeding experience and even the first motherhood experience in general went really smoothly, I got pregnant before she was even one. And so I had my second baby when she was about 19 months old. And then not, I wouldn't say my breastfeeding experience that time was terrible, but I was breastfeeding a new baby and I had a toddler, a 1 year old,
Yeah.
and I had other things going on in life. And so it was just kind of like, whoa, I really thought I had this motherhood thing down pat, like, wow, I'm killing it. And I learned very quickly that I wasn't.
Yeah.
But both breastfeeding experiences, both of those actually really did go very smoothly. And I felt in general, I mean, I dealt with like a clogged duct here and there. And I dealt with, like I was waking up all the time. I mean, I never slept for like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Even though I dealt with all of that, I did kind of have like this sense of, well, those are all normal experiences with breastfeeding. Despite them feeling very overwhelming sometimes, I did feel like nothing was quite out of the ordinary. It was just something like I needed to get used to. Then I had a third baby, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this, but my third baby was actually born the day of the COVID lockdowns. So she was born that morning. I,
Holy
I
cow.
know it's insane. So, like the morning that everything was shut down, that's when she was born. And so I actually have this like, it's funny because I have a really good sense of how long the COVID thing has been going on because I know exactly how old my baby is. So for a while, I was like, well, it's been 43 days. um, so my third baby, I don't know if this is typical of third babies, although I have heard this. They're a wild card. I mean, she really threw me through all of the hoops that motherhood could bring. She made me test all of my limits that I thought I had. She has taught me so much. And the irony is that I had a miscarriage before I was pregnant with her. And I remember whenever I wanted to become pregnant with her, I remember thinking like, okay, I am ready to learn all of the lessons that this new baby is willing to bring me. And I remember thinking like this really deeply, like philosophically, like, all right, this baby is clearly here to sent to me to teach me some lessons, as because I went through that miscarriage experience, which was really hard for me.
Yeah.
And like, okay, I need to be willing and ready to accept these lessons and for this baby to help me grow as a person, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Well, like 2 weeks after she was born, I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Because not only did I have a new baby, and she was a different baby than any other baby I'd ever experienced. But the whole world flipped upside down at the exact same time.
Yeah. And you
And
didn't have
so
that support.
what's that?
And you didn't have that support there, you know?
No. So
Yeah.
that is another funny thing. It was like, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners have young babies and have what they would call like COVID babies or have had babies during this time. Like, in one way, it was like, all right, well, this is really sweet. We can kind of nestle in our home and have this little sweet, slow postpartum experience. And it ended up being the complete opposite of that, because what happened was my jewelry business grew exponentially immediately right then. And I had zero outside support. My childcare was gone. My family wasn't coming to visit and help out. And so actually I had what the opposite of what I thought would happen, which was when the whole world shut down, I thought, well, this is going to be, at least for me, it'll be kind of nice because I am a homebody. It'll be nice to like rest at home with baby. I'll get so much rest. And the opposite happened. But you asked me about my breastfeeding experience, and my daughter is now actually 2.5. And she had a lot of a different experience than my other babies. She was not soothed at the breast the same way that they were. And so I continually felt like I was doing something wrong. Like I felt a lot of shame about it too, because I felt like I don't know what's going on there. And there really wasn't anything particularly terrible about it. Like I wasn't dealing with mastitis or a tongue tie or anything. She just didn't seem happy nursing. And I still don't really know why. And so that was a really difficult struggle to get through, but we eventually pushed through.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
There was a lot there. I'm like, wow, I had no idea. But it is interesting how when you have kids, and for me, when I had one, I was the same. Like, I've got this down. If other moms just did it my way, it would just work out, And then you're humbled. You're so humbled. And
They
you're
really
like,
are.
wow, whatever works for you, mama. Like whatever, works for your family. But I wasn't there yet with my first because everything I did was working out. And I just had a
Yes.
very go with the flow child. It's like I flew with him to Australia, New Zealand by myself. And
Wow.
yeah, and I just could, because I've taken him like all over the world, and he is just my buddy, like he's just easy. Nursing was easy, everything about it. I cloth diapered, like everything was no problem. And then my second was the same. Like I just like, and it's so funny because I'm in labor. I'm like, this is gonna be my Zen baby. And then I had him, and I was just like if God has a sense of humor, holy cow, this was hilarious because it's just he wouldn't stop screaming. And I like to name my babies after I meet them. And we left the birth center with no name because I couldn't look at I like not that I couldn't, but I didn't have the opportunity to like look at him because I was trying to stop him like screaming, and he wouldn't stop screaming. And I had a student midwife there, and she just kept making these comments like, wow. And wow, you can tell he really has like the blood flow and like all this, and sure pink up, and like, wow, those are some lungs. And I'm like, yeah, like I know, like I'm trying to calm him down, And same thing, like the nursing was just not the same, it's just like you're trying to, that's the easiest way to soothe. It's like a great tool to always have. And like that he would just bite me every single time. It was a struggle, but yeah, same thing. Isn't it so interesting how motherhood can be so humbling? But I had my third in December of 2019, and I'm so glad because holy cow, like my birth experience would have been so different. And I've
Yes.
yeah, I can't imagine how that was for you.
The birth experience itself was actually great because I birthed at home. So I didn't have to deal with like the hospital and the regulations, and everything was still so new at that time anyway. There really weren't any regulations. No one really knew what was going on except like school was shut down and like,
Mhm.
stores closed and restaurants that day.
Yeah.
So I had my birth team at my house, and I remember we kind of like conversed like, isn't that weird, they shut down school today, but at the time we were still so naive. We had no idea what was to come. We were just like, oh well, I mean, clearly there's more important things happening. Like I'm birthing a child. So like, we'll deal with that later. And then of course it blew up so much bigger than we had ever imagined. But thankfully I was at home for the birth itself, and it was totally fine. Everything was great.
Oh, fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
you used to have a childbirth class, right? You used to
Yes.
have a company that.
So yes, before I started Milk and Honey with my friend Meghan, I started a business in 2016 after I had my first two daughters, and that was a doula and childbirth business. So I used to teach childbirth classes. I ended up selling that business in 2020, actually, when my daughter was about 6 months old.
Okay. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I feel like being so well educated in birth and especially natural childbirth, you're probably just set up for success on that with the birth experience.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, yes. And then to another degree, I might micromanage myself sometimes in labor and also overthink everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, more information. It's a lot harder to like surrender to the process. At least it was for me, because
Yeah.
I was overthinking everything, like what's happening right now, and why am I don't know. I am continually amazed by birth and the lessons that it teaches me, and humbled by it too, because it's easy to say, like, oh, I teach a natural childbirth class, therefore natural childbirth should be easy for me. And yeah, it is the opposite of easy.
Yeah.
And every time I do it, I say, well, I'm never doing that again. And then I do it again.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I've noticed some labor nurses that are, when they birth, they just know too much at the same time, and it's hard to like not get in your own head. So that is true. Sometimes you just got to block it out.
Yes.
But yeah, I also noticed that when you order your jewelry, you have like write about your experience. And so
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, like, wow, you or Meghan probably had enough experience in breastfeeding or having some trials to where you're like, let's hear about yours, like share yours.
Yeah.
What
And I
was your thought
mean,
behind that?
well, I think that part of the reason why we want our customers to share their experience with us is because this type of jewelry, it's not like you're like walking into Target and picking up a necklace because you're like, well, that's cute.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this isn't like that at all. This is like a piece of sacredness that you're going to be wearing forever. And I wanted to make sure that our customers know that we understood, because we've been in the throes and in the trenches
Yeah.
of breastfeeding and of motherhood. I wanted them to know that they can feel seen and heard from us, because they deserve to be able to trust the women who are caring for, sometimes our customers, it's the last ounce they have, and they mail it to us. And I'm like, okay, I want them to know that we operate with integrity and we treat all of their keepsakes, whether it's breast milk, and we can get into this. We accept other inclusions as well. But
Right.
no matter what it is that they're sending to us, we appreciate and respect the sacredness of that, and we're going to take really good care of it. And part of that comes from us hearing you. I mean, how can we know who our customers are if we don't hear their stories and get to learn about them? And so every time a customer orders, they have the option to share a little bit about their story. And then that helps us to create their jewelry, because whenever we're creating their jewelry, we can kind of like, I don't know, infuse a little love in there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I wrote mine, I was like, well, for me, like on my third baby, it was like, it's just been such an easy, joyful experience. So it was nice to be able to write
Yeah.
just like a happy note on that one.
No, I'm glad we do get a lot of those. And we also, of course, get a lot of the opposite too.
Yeah.
People who are going through like really, really tough times to be able to nurse their babies. And so, but we all deserve to feel seen and heard and validated. And so, I mean, I think it's good for everybody.
Yeah, I love that. And there was even like when you get your jewelry back, there's a little handwritten thank you card, which I'm sure that is tedious.
It is tedious. And but that was something from the very beginning, like order number 00001. I was like, we're writing a thank you card. And that has been really, really important to me from the beginning. Of course, in the beginning, we were receiving just like a handful of orders a month. It was really easy. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna write my 5 thank you cards now. And now it's not quite like that anymore. And yet we insist on always writing a personalized handwritten thank you card. In addition to the fact that it is meaningful for our customers, it is another source of income for our employees. Like our employees can earn money by showing others how much they care about them and making them feel seen and heard. And I'm like, well, this is a win-win. Why would we ever stop doing that? But you're right, it is tedious. There was a time, I mean, like total, we've had over 10,000 orders now. We've written over 10,000 thank you cards personalized by hand every single time. And so, yeah, it is tedious, but it's worth it. I still think every single time.
I do too, because I wasn't expecting it when I got my order. I was just so excited to finally get my earrings, and it was just a nice surprise, but I thought it was very sweet and thoughtful.
I'm glad that you appreciated it. Thank you
I
for
did.
sharing that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Okay, so what has been the hardest part about becoming a mom for you?
The hardest part for me has been the loss of, I'm trying to think of the right way to word this, my level of I can't think of the word. I have this funny thing with my friend. This is a side story. She went to Oxford for college, which is like fancy school. And I wouldn't say I'm unintelligent, but my vocabulary, I have a hard time with vocabulary. And so we always joke because she's actually really good with words and with vocabulary. I'm like, oh, Oxford, come here. I need help with this word. The word is independence. It's not even that big of a word. Anyway, my loss of independence has been continually, and is something that I'm continuing to deal with. Before I had kids and before I met my husband, this is funny to me now because I love being a mother, and I do believe that it is one of the reasons why I'm here, is to get there and to raise my kids. But before I met my husband, I always told my family that I would never get married and never have kids because I really enjoy being alone. And I like doing things on my own, and I like being in control of my situation. Like I'm a type A person, and I was like, well, I can't imagine being married and like having to like share a life with someone. But I want to do different stuff than me, you know?
Yeah.
And I can't imagine being a mother. Imagine all that time you have to dedicate to these other people, you know, which I now realize was so incredibly selfish. But at the time, I was just thinking, like, oh, I just really enjoy being alone. Anyhow, so that has been continually a difficult thing for me, is just the loss of independence, especially in the first year or so, because, you know, nursing, especially if you're exclusively nursing, which is what I've done. My babies have never really enjoyed taking a bottle, and I've never really needed them to because I didn't have like a 9 to 5 out of the house. And so there's a lot that comes into it. In fact, I remember, as I mentioned earlier, when my first daughter was born, I felt really confident as a mother. I felt like, okay, well, I wanted to nurse her. I felt like that was important. I'm able to do that. Check. I wanted her to, you know, I wanted to make sure that I was giving her the attention that she wanted and needed. And I wanted to be able to stay home with her. Okay, I quit my job. Check. I'm like, okay, I'm doing all the things right. And then there was one day where a friend of mine, and my daughter was like maybe 2 months old at this point, a friend of mine and an old coworker messaged me and said, hey, we're going out for happy hour. Would you like to come? And I literally picked up my phone and texted, yeah, what time? And put my phone down, and then thought, oh my gosh, I can't go to that. What am I going to do with the baby? Like, I was like, oh, and that's whenever the loss of independence hit me. That moment, I was like, wow. You know, on further reflection, I realized maybe I could have figured it out, but it was just the moment where I just realized, oh, I actually can't do whatever I want to anymore. And it sounds silly, but the loss of independence has been really difficult for me and continues to be, especially as I have become an entrepreneur and I have other responsibilities outside of my home and responsibilities to employees and to my business partner and to our customers. Just kind of like managing, I hate to use the word balance, but like balancing the responsibility to everyone and the lack of like independence that comes with.
Yeah. That's I feel the same, but like very similar. I had like a different word for myself, but it's like understanding that the time is not my own anymore, because I was so used to I want to do this, so I'm gonna go do this. Like I'm always
Yeah.
like happy hour, sure, great. With my
Yeah.
first, I still could like I would just take them to the happy hour. It was fine. But when I had my second, I was like, oh no, like if we are not home by 4, like everyone's paying for this, you know? So
Yeah.
that like witching hour like is struck and y'all start getting dirty looks. But it is so interesting how there's just something that you didn't realize, you're like, wow, I want to sleep, but that doesn't mean I get to sleep right now because my child needs me at 3 a.m. this last night. Or, I would like to go do, I don't know, I'd like to learn about something, and I realize, or like work on my computer. And that's just, I have to make sure either outsource the time with somebody else because the time is just not my own anymore. Right.
Right.
So I feel the same. Like, I guess it is independence. And I'm just like, I just very much value time.
I,
But
but I
yeah,
don't think that even people who don't have that, like, place that much importance on time, I still think every mother goes through that experience where they realize that the life that they once lived is no longer. And that's a hard pill to swallow whenever you're in mom. You're already hormonal and overwhelmed and doing all of these new things that you've never done before. And now you suddenly have the realization that who you once were no longer exists.
yeah,
And yeah, that's a really, really difficult thing to deal with. And honestly, I think that's part of the reason why, whenever I started my doula and childbirth business, why I wanted to do that. I just felt like, wow, I went through this most incredible pivotal moment becoming a mother, and I want to be able to help other people do that better
yeah.
because it is so difficult and is such an identity shift. And then of course my second business also dealt with helping people do that. So
Yeah, I love that. Being a lactation counselor, I love being a part of that too, just
yes.
supporting mamas through that in that trying time because you have this idea in your head of how it's going to be, and sometimes it really is that way, right? Like with our first, it's like, well, this is exactly how I thought. And then it's not when and either it might be your first or it might be your third or second, but when you have that humbling experience, you absolutely know. And yeah, having that support, I think, is a game changer. Or having someone make sure that you felt heard, right?
Yeah, totally. And I want to be that person for other people
Yeah.
because I was actually just talking with my business coach today about this, just that, like, I was very supported. Whenever I was a new mom, like my husband is a super supportive person. And I remember a moment whenever I finally looked at him and I was like, this is so hard. I hadn't slept more than like an hour
Mm.
consecutively in like over a week. And I remember thinking, like, I had no idea. And I mentioned that my breastfeeding experience was smooth, and it was.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is a normal postpartum experience. Like, you're just exhausted. And I remember just telling him, like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. And I meant it with like every fiber of my being. And he was like, yeah, you're doing great. I'm really proud of you. And I was like, I don't think you understand. Like, his his level of support, like he was very supportive of me, but like I didn't feel validated in that. And I realized upon further reflection now, like that's what I was seeking, was validation,
Yeah.
not just support. And so I think there's like a level there that only another mom might be able to understand. And so I think that that's part of the reason that I like doing what I do, is because I like to be that person for someone,
Yeah.
especially when needed, you
I
know.
love that. And you were saying, because we were talking about time and how like being a new mom is so like time consuming. You're talking about still trying to find that balance. Well, you have 3 kids. You're running a business that is growing exponentially. And then you're also homeschooling, I believe, right?
I do homeschool.
Yeah.
Yes.
I homeschool as well. How
Oh,
are
cool.
you balancing all of that?
I'm not. Um,
Okay.
so I guess I am. But I think that what it really comes down to is prioritizing. Like, I've learned I wouldn't say that I'm an expert at balancing my time between all of those things, because I'm definitely not, and things change like every single day. But I've definitely learned to prioritize the things that are non-negotiable. Like, this absolutely needs to happen today, therefore I will do that first. And if that day homeschooling is put on the back burner, well, that's part of the reason why we homeschool, isn't it? To be flexible. And so I've learned to accept that, and just that you can't do everything. Another thing that I've really worked on over the past few years, I started my first business in 2016. So I guess I've been working on it for 6 years, is just the learning how to not waste time and learning how to be really efficient with your time. And so I would say that I waste zero time ever. So I had to train myself to kind of like come up with a list of things that are important to me today, and then get those things done. And then if I have extra time, then like we can spend a little extra time on school today. If I have extra time and I have a few work tasks that can be done that weren't a non-negotiable, well, then I'll work on those today. I know everyone talks about asking for help, and I think that that's really great advice, because I do ask for help all the time. Like, I have childcare, that I didn't have in the beginning. And I have asked for help through like hiring babysitters and asking in-laws for help when I didn't used to do that. And it is really great advice to ask for help, but usually telling people, oh, you just need to ask for help, isn't going to make them ask for help. Like, they have to be, at least in my experience, I had to be at the bottom of the bottom to be finally, okay, I got to ask for help. But I will say that reaching that realization has helped me immensely, because I realized that I not only can't do everything by myself, but that no one, it wins. It's a lose, lose, lose for me, my kids, my business, everybody, whenever I live a life where I'm just constantly overwhelmed with tasks to do, because there's so much responsibility that lies on my shoulders. And so even when you give up a little tiny bit of that responsibility, the relief feels really good. So yeah, I've been working on that through the years as well, and just kind of like coming up with a good balance of a rigid structure of like, okay, we have childcare on these days, so I save like these deep work tasks that take longer for those days, and then I just, on the days where my kids are home with me, we really focus on school, and I make sure that all of my emails are answered and make sure all of my non-negotiables are done. But I wouldn't say I like get into like deep work on those days either. So I think it's just kind of creating a structure that works for you, and balancing the rigid structure with also having to be flexible, as you know, because we've been trying to have this podcast recording for a long time, and reschedule because of sick kids.
That's okay. I've been the most excited about this podcast, so it was worth it.
I'm really excited too.
Yeah. I think a lot of the mamas, I think, that contact me they're just saying like, it's the struggle is doing everything all on their own, and realizing at that point when they're reaching out that they need help, and it is such a weight off your shoulders because I'm the same way, I'm homeschooling, I'm breastfeeding, I'm taking care of 3 kids all by myself a lot of time when my husband's on a work trip, and just to like hire a sitter, or make sure like my other kids, here's a game for you to play, so I could just focus on nursing for this moment, instead of them destroying the house or something. So, yeah, asking for help as much as possible, even if it's the tiniest thing, is like, okay, on Thursdays I get a babysitter, so that way I can get some life, or have that balance of like the satisfaction of getting things done, or like whether you need somebody like a doula, like I can't imagine, like that is the most valuable thing ever, right? And having a lactation counselor, just somebody there to like support you, hear you, and help you through the way, and that could be a different role depending on where you're at in your life,
Yeah, sure. I remember having an experience related to the independence thing, where I had a baby and a toddler, and I had no childcare at that point whatsoever. And I was doing it on my own. And I remember that was probably the most overwhelmed I'd ever felt in my life. ironically, I didn't have nearly as many responsibilities as I have now, but it was like a new experience of like going from a mom of one to a mom of two. And I stopped by a coffee shop because I remember thinking like, oh, I just would really love a coffee that would make me feel so much better. So I go into the coffee shop and I remember thinking like, just getting my toddler and baby out of the car to go in there to get a coffee is so much hassle. It's almost worth not drinking the coffee. But I did it. And it was like raining, and I have like, a car seat and a bag and a toddler who's like trying to run through a parking lot. And there's like cars coming. And I see a friend walk out. This friend has two kids as well. And she walks out alone, holding a cup of coffee, just like do, do, do. And I remember thinking, what is this life that we live? You can just walk into a coffee shop because you want to and grab a coffee and slowly walk out in silence. And like, I can't even comprehend how that's possible. And then I finally got to the point that you're talking about where you just have to ask for help. Hired a babysitter so I could get some work done. And I was like, the very first thing I did when I had my first babysitter was like, I'm going to that coffee shop and I'm going to in slowly, and I'm going to get my coffee and I'm going to walk out with no stress. And it was like the most relieving feeling. I even remember what coffee I ordered. It was such a beautiful moment to just finally like take a deep breath.
Yeah, you earned it.
Yeah, for sure.
When they're that close too, it is so much harder. So because you're like, at that point, you need to keep both alive, and they don't understand that anything could kill. Like if I walk off this table, I will fall and hurt myself, or I run into a street, there's a car. They don't understand that yet. And you have like two at an age where you're just constantly keeping eyes on, and that is so hard. Like I have my first two are just shy of 3 years, and then the next one down, they're both like 21 months apart. And so yeah, it was quite an adjustment. I mean, it's so close. Because there's like a year where you're like two I need to keep alive at all times. It's not one.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So I found out about breast milk jewelry from your Instagram account, and I was like, this is awesome. I am totally going to order this someday. And I was probably pregnant at that point with my third. But I'm curious, how did you find out about breast milk jewelry? How did that even start?
Well, okay, so we're not the first breast milk jewelry company that's ever existed. I had heard, but before us, because we're about 4.5 years old now, before us, there were really only a handful. And I had heard about it probably just from being on like mommy Facebook groups that I was in, or like breastfeeding groups, or like home birth groups, or I don't know, baby wearing, maybe, stuff like that. And people in those groups would share that they ordered breast milk jewelry. And I remember thinking that was really cool.
Yeah.
I never ordered any myself, actually. Not that I don't see value. I just, for whatever reason, hadn't ordered it. I started my business, my first business, the doula company, in 2016. And this was all kind of around that time that I was telling you that I was really overwhelmed before I started asking for help, because I had prepped to start that business. It takes a really long time to start a business, as I'm sure you know. There's a lot that goes into it. So it took me like 6 months. Yeah. Well, in that 6 months, I had a toddler and a little baby, and my brother died suddenly.
Right. Yeah.
So all of this happened at one time. Shortly after my brother died is when my first business launched. And at that point, my business launched a few days after my second daughter turned 1. So I had a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, fresh in grief of my younger brother suddenly dying when he was 25. And now I have a job for the first time in a while. And all of the responsibilities of the job lie on my shoulders.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of like a lot. So it took me a long time, maybe like a year and a half, to kind of like take a deep breath from all of that and to get through that stage. But simultaneously, my friend from college, we had met in college in music school because we both were musicians and music teachers. We ironically ended up in the same town, like 300 miles away from where we met in college. We now live in a different state. So we thought that was kind of cool. She got pregnant. I became her doula. she had her baby and she left her musician and music teaching job as well, just the same way that I did. So she was now a stay-at-home mom. I was staying at home. And to be honest with you, the on-call lifestyle of being a doula with a 1 and a 2-year-old is nearly impossible. I don't have family in town, so I didn't have like a mom that was retired that I could be like, Mom, can you come over and hang out with my kids? I got to go to this birth. It was more like, I have a long list of 37 potential babysitters that might be able to watch my kids today. I better start at the top because somebody's in labor. And I would go down the list. And that was incredibly stressful, especially because I was a breastfeeding mom with babies that didn't really drink from a bottle. So it was like nearly impossible. When I kind of came up with the idea to do this breast milk jewelry company, I approached my friend Meghan because I think breast milk jewelry is awesome. I wanted to start a business where I could be more behind the scenes rather than the face of the business in terms of like hands-on in person. But I don't want to make jewelry. And I didn't have any desire to make it or do anything like that. I'm not creative, like as an artist, like a hands-on artist at all. Yeah. But I thought the idea was cool. And I had had all of this experience with starting a different business. So I thought, well, I think I can do that again. And I think breast milk jewelry would be cool. It kind of fits in with like my theme of wanting to be able to serve other women like me. Mm-hmm. Friend Meghan, we would go to the beach. We live close to the beach, and she would pick up sea glass that had like drifted ashore, and she would find these beautiful pieces of sea glass, and it was like really simple, but she would like put wire on them and wrap them in like really pretty sea glass necklaces and earrings and stuff. And I remember thinking, I bet we could wrap a breast milk stone like that instead of. So I approached her with this idea, and she was a stay-at-home mom. She had a baby, a lot of medical complications. Her baby, I was there for her baby's birth. Her baby actually had a fatal diagnosis and wasn't expected to live after she was born. Miraculously survived, despite being born with no kidneys. Had a kidney transplant. I know your eyes are like, oh my gosh, this is.
I can't imagine.
It was something. And so she was like essentially a 24/7 nurse to her daughter. She couldn't go back to work. There was just no chance of that. Her daughter was on dialysis at home as a newborn. It was insane. But she no longer had an income because she had to stay home and take care of her daughter. And she had all of these additional medical expenses and stuff. And I thought, I bet we could do this. I bet we could do this. And at the time, like I mentioned, there were a handful of breast milk jewelry companies, but none of them had jewelry that I loved. Like I was like, I mean, it's pretty, but I don't love it. I bet I could make something I like. And so I approached her with this idea, and that's how Milk and Honey was born.
Oh, nice. That's
yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
It was very.
I can't imagine how she's doing that. And it was her husband, right, that ended up donating the kidney?
Yes. So her daughter, Charlotte, received a kidney from her dad, who also went to college with us as a musician with me and my husband. We both met our husbands together. So Wes was able and was like the perfect match to donate a kidney to his daughter. And Charlotte received her kidney. I think she was 2 when she received it, maybe 3. I can't even remember. It feels like a blur. It was a lot.
Oh, poor thing. And to do that and start a new company, I can't imagine. Both of you were juggling a lot.
Yes. Well, that was easy compared to the years that followed, actually. Has gone through so much over the years, and it's just been a long journey to where we are now. I'm really, really happy where we are right now, and I'm really proud of it.
Well, tell me about that. What was your process like? I know like 2020 was a busy year for you guys.
Well, we opened in 2018, and we grew like I expected us to grow, slowly. I mean, it was growing. We received our first order the day that we opened, which was April 20th, 2018. Yeah. And then we didn't receive another order for like 27 days. So, but I didn't expect us to be overloaded. I mean, we had 0 Instagram followers. No one knew who we were yet. So I was like, all right, well, this is reasonable. We can grow slowly as we figure this stuff out. So that's what we did. And that was a lot of the time when Meghan was dealing with her daughter's transplant and stuff. So really things did not feel super overwhelming at first. We would slowly grow. I remember being like, we have 100 Instagram followers, and we would like do a little dance. We would be like, we received 2 orders in a week. That's amazing. I legitimately remember having these thoughts. And so over those 2 years, we grew slowly, but we're consistently growing because I was doing all of the things that I thought I should do, which is being consistent on social media, creating an email list, doing all those things. And they were working, but at a reasonable rate. And then 2020 happened. And milk and honey, I mean, we were talking about this before we started recording, and you were like, that's amazing that milk and honey grew so fast. And it was like, for one, finally I was bringing like a paycheck home, because before I had left my job in 2013, I had no paycheck. And we were living on my husband's teacher salary exclusively, like one income as a teacher salary. And whenever I became a doula, occasionally I'd bring a paycheck home, but not every month, because I didn't always have a client. And then whenever we started milk and honey, it took us a little while to become profitable, which is pretty normal in like an e-commerce business. And then even then, I'm not even exaggerating, I was bringing home paychecks that were like $98 for the month. Yeah. Because we were investing a lot back into the business. So finally, whenever it grew, we were like, yeah, it's a total blessing. Like, I can actually support my family by bringing home a paycheck that's more than $98 a month. And yet at the same time, it was the most overwhelming experience of our lives, because 2020, as I mentioned, the day that I had my 3rd baby was the day of the COVID lockdowns. So in addition to the fact that we were dealing with like regulations with running our business and having to kind of like monitor that, I still had the doula business. That doula business, which had grown and was like thriving. I had a team of doulas for our company. And so they were attending births, even though I wasn't at the time, because I was on like maternity leave. Everything stopped. We were no longer allowed to go into the hospital. We were no longer allowed to do anything. We went from like what was a growing doula company to $0 income, like just flat lines. So that was kind of crazy all at the same time. I guess because of 2020, I don't know exactly what happened. We started growing really fast. And at first it was exciting until we got to the point where we couldn't keep up with it. Ironically, we had planned to hire a new employee to work in the jewelry studio and help Meghan out with like some of the behind the scenes stuff of crafting the jewelry, like just preserving breast milk, and crushing it down into a powder, or packaging up orders to be shipped out, or unboxing milk shipments, like things that like an assistant could do. We hired her shortly before COVID. So then once COVID hit, she could no longer come to work. She was a high schooler. She wasn't allowed to come, first of all. And then second of all, Meghan has this extremely medically fragile daughter, and the business was in her home at the time. It was just her in like a guest room making this jewelry. And so she didn't want people coming in and out, especially at the beginning. We didn't know what to expect. It was all very frightening. So Meghan's doing everything on her own. By the way, she's pregnant. Then we grew really fast. Like before 2020, we would have a sale, maybe like 2 years in, like the end of 2019, we would have a sale, like a Black Friday weekend sale. And we would receive like 30 orders in a weekend. And at that time, we were like, oh my gosh, yeah. 30? Like, this is insane. How will we? So I'm like behind the scenes, like typing furiously, trying to respond to all these people, process all these orders, order these jewelry components, and thinking like 30 in a weekend is just whoa. But we were blessed. Like, we felt grateful. Yeah. The first sale that we had after COVID hit was about a month after, which was April 20th, which is what we call our annual birthday sale. So we had this annual birthday sale. My daughter was 1 month old. She was pregnant. COVID happened. We had no assistant. And we literally, I wrote this down, we had 280 orders in 3 days. Oh my gosh. So we were like, crap. We can't do that. But we had no choice. We didn't expect it. So we have no choice but to fill all these orders. And then Meghan had some extreme health issues in her pregnancy. She ended up getting kidney stones really, really bad, to the point where she was having kidney surgery and having drains put in her kidneys while she's pregnant.
Holy cow.
Yes. So she had multiple surgeries in pregnancy, which I didn't even know that was even possible. She, coming home, her jewelry studio was upstairs in like a guest room. As I mentioned, she couldn't even walk up the stairs to go upstairs and make jewelry. Yeah. And we had all hundreds of orders to fill. I can't even do that job. I don't even know how to make jewelry. I don't even want to. And I had a baby at home. And we weren't in person because it was COVID and we were supposed to be locked down in our homes. We literally had a lockdown order from our governor that we weren't allowed to leave. So we were like, what do we do? So all of this craziness is happening. Meghan's baby is born via C-section. So then she has dealing with that surgery on top of the other ones. And then, of course, COVID and everything. So we had another assistant that was helping me before all of this. She started taking over responsibilities that weren't her job because we had nobody to do them. It was insane. Finally, later in 2020, we had another assistant, like an office manager, come on board. We were like starting to take a deep breath, like maybe we can have some help here. I mean, I was up till like 5 o'clock in the morning, often with a new baby, either worrying about work or working. It was absolutely like the lowest point of my life because I felt the weight of the responsibility and my obligation to my business and to our customers. It was insane. We finally hired someone to come on board with us. And it was going great. She had like a lot of hours that she was able to work. She is the most responsible person. She is a very organized person. She was a friend of mine. I actually was her doula for a while first. And everything was like starting to feel like, okay, we can do this. We finally have help. We've got this. And then she fell and broke both of her wrists in an accident.
Oh my gosh.
And couldn't come to work for months. Because she had 2 casts on her wrist where she literally couldn't even pick up like a piece of paper. And she was supposed to be crushing milk, like in a mortar and pestle, which is like hard on the wrist. So she couldn't come to work for months. And then wait till you hear this. The next birthday sale that we had, we received 936 orders in 3 days.
Holy cow.
And we were like, what? What do we do? What are we supposed to do? So here we are just slogging through and figuring it out. And I'm really, really grateful and pleased to say that like over those 4.5 years, we have figured it out every single time. And despite us having like a lot of really bad moments, we are now in a really good place. Knock on wood, nobody breaks their wrist. Every single time we have a sale leading up to it, we're like, nobody break your wrists. Please don't break your wrists. A really solid team. Things are going really well for us. We love our jobs. Things are for the most part really smooth. And we're just like working on finally getting to the place where we can grow on purpose rather than by accident.
That's hilarious. I've never seen anyone like grow on accident, but still, I love that. And wow.
Yeah, it's a
time.
Yeah.
Holy cow. I can't imagine like 900 orders. Over 900 orders.
But you know what? We filled them all because we had no choice, because we had obligations to people. And like I mentioned in the beginning, like running a business with integrity is really important to me. And there were a couple of times, I'm really proud to say that there were not a lot of times, but there were a few times where we had to email customers and be like, this is not coming. Your jewelry is not coming in the time frame that we expected. It's going to be 1 week late, and everyone has been really, really grateful and really accommodating and honest. And because we've been really transparent, it's been fine. Yeah. That's not even to mention, like, as you know, COVID had a lot of issues with like supply chain issues. So like we couldn't even receive things, we couldn't order jewelry components and get them in a reasonable time. So even if we were free to make the jewelry, we didn't have the jewelry in the studio yet. So we were waiting around. So it was just a really, really crazy time. But things are going a lot better right now.
Good. I always wondered too, like when I ordered mine, how do you not mix up everyone's milk? Like if you have 900 orders and you have like 9 little breast milk bags, how is that not, like, how do you stay organized enough to where you're not mixing up someone else's milk?
Well, everything is labeled with your name and order number. Like from the very the first thing that we do is unbox the milk and label the bag of milk and label the order and make sure they all match together and put them in a special container in a refrigerator before they're preserved. And even the very first thing that we do is make all of your labels for the whole process. So like after your milk is preserved, it's laid out flat on a piece of parchment paper to kind of like dehydrate and dry out before it can be ground down into a powder. Well, the very first thing we do when we unbox your milk is we make that label too. So every single thing is labeled along the way and it's all ready. Another person was surprised recently to hear this. Like a customer was speaking with my general manager, Terry, about preserving the milk. And we do everything one order at a time. So there really is no like order to get mixed up, because if we're preserving one batch of milk, right, and then we put the label on it and put it away and then get the next batch out, they're not going to get mixed up. And so we do everything as safely and successfully as possible. And we just have like developed systems along the way that have worked really well for us. And I think really the most important thing to note is that like we're all young moms, and well, young is mid-30s young, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Are we young? So, but we're all new moms, like we're all breastfeeding moms, and we want to treat your breast milk the same way that we would treat ours, which is to take care of it. Like if you're pumping, you're going to write the name and the date on there. You're going to write how many ounces are in there. You're going to put it in the fridge. If it sits out too long, you toss it because you don't want to risk your baby milk that's not healthy or safe for them. And so we treat everyone else's milk the same way as ours. We do save all of the preserved milk. So we have like a literal wall full of little drawers with little baggies with your name and order number on it with your preserved milk in there. So if somebody orders again, then they can ask to use that same preserved milk that we already have on file, and we can go find it really easily. So everything is labeled really, really well, and we're just like super, super careful.
Nice. I did notice I got an email once saying like, you don't need to send in milk and you can do another order. And I was like, that is so cool. But like, how have you kept my milk for this many years? Which I was really impressed.
Yeah, thank you. It just sits in a drawer unless you want to use it again. But it's in a powder, so it's not like the actual milk. So it's not like sitting around molding or anything. It's already been. It's just a little white powder, which is kind of like shelf stable. So it just sits there until you want to order again, which is really cool.
Yeah. So now you guys have these DIY kits. And so do you have this, first off, like how did you start doing that? What came to your mind of doing that? But also, is the process still the same? So if I did a DIY kit, am I having to dehydrate my milk and crush it? Is it all the same steps that you do?
So yeah, the idea came to us because we at the time had only been, every single part of our business is handcrafted and custom. Like every single person's jewelry is custom. Not only can you get it with your own custom breast milk, of course, but then our customers design their stones. So like, they might want it to look red or have little gold flakes on the side or whatever. So everything is so customized that we can't turn around a piece of jewelry in like a few days. Like, if you order jewelry on Amazon, you're going to get it in a couple days. We just physically can't do that. So we wanted to have an item where we could be able to just ship it out, like something that we can hold in stock. In addition to that, a lot of customers for us, like our jewelry is on the more expensive side. It's a lot more expensive than you're going to find in Target or Amazon, of course, because it's very custom and handcrafted from beginning to end. For sure, it's worth the investment, but there are people who can't make the investment. And so we thought, well, this is a more affordable way for someone to be able to get a really beautiful piece of jewelry made from their own breast milk. And so it's more affordable for the customer. It's a very quick turnaround time for us. So like yesterday was our last day to order a DIY kit before to be able to get it by Christmas. A lot of men were ordering yesterday. But for the first time, we were able to offer them something that they could get last minute. Whereas before, we would get calls like in the beginning of December, like, hey, I want to buy my wife a breast milk jewelry for Christmas. Can I have it there by Christmas? And we'd be like, no, absolutely not. I'm really sorry, but like, there's just no way we can do that. And so finally, we have a chance to be able to turn around something quickly and something that's really affordable. And a lot of people really like the experience of being able to do it on their own, especially if they're crafty and they like designing, creating their own jewelry. So it's been fun for a lot of people.
Yeah. So do you have like a step-by-step process in that? Is it hard?
Yeah. It's not hard to do. It's actually really easy to do, which this is what happened. Like whenever we were creating this DIY kit, that was my main concern. Like, are people actually going to be able to do this at home? Because it's taken us a long time to get our process down cleanly where we can make beautiful jewelry every single time. But part of the reason why that is for us is because we're doing all of these crazy designs all the time, or we're like putting jewelry in molds and sanding and drilling. So we're like, all right, well, we'll create jewelry for the DIY kit that only needs to be poured into a cup rather than having the sanding and the drilling and all that stuff. That's easy. So my thought was, I own this company and I've never made a piece of jewelry in my life. If I can do it, then we'll sell DIY kits. Like if it's easy enough for me to do in a foolproof way, then we'll sell them. And I can do it. So I'm like, of course everyone can. So it really is super simple. It's a matter of heating your breast milk up on a pan on the stove, adding the breast milk preservation powder that we send along with it, heating it up until it forms a paste, wiping it onto a piece of parchment paper, and then you just let it dry for like 3 days. You let it sit there till it's dry. You put it in a bowl, you crush it with the back of a spoon. You don't even need a fancy mortar and pestle, although if you have one, it does work better. But you can crush it with the back of a spoon. You mix it up with some resin, and then you literally just drop it into the cup, the bezel cup that we send you for the necklace pendant. That's it.
Nice.
Takes a couple of days because you have to wait for the time for it to dry. And then you have to wait for the resin and stone to cure. So that takes a couple of days. But all in all, it's a really simple process. And none of the steps take any longer than like a half an hour. So like if you're a busy mom and you have little kids or whatever, you can do it in a nap time. And then a couple days later, come back in a nap time and do the next step. And it's really simple and fast and easy. And I really do feel like it's foolproof if you can follow directions.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to try that.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's really
nice. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to try that. So tell us a little bit more about Milk and Honey before we end the show.
Yeah, well, I think that like the most important thing about Milk and Honey that I want to share is that we're a woman-owned business. We're a team of young women. The oldest of us is 40. And we love each other and we love our customers and we just genuinely really do want to serve them. And I think that as a customer, if it were me, I would be like, and I know our customers feel this way, like maybe you had a really difficult time struggling to breastfeed and you have like 1 ounce left after those years of struggle. And if it were me, I would be scared to send that. Just can I trust those people, and I think that what we want our customers to know is that we are like them and we are a team of women who are basically like your community. We're going to treat your breast milk just like we would treat our own or our family members' breast milk. And we recognize the importance and we recognize the value and the sacredness and the intimacy of this piece of jewelry. And we want our customers to always know that. So for us, it's more than just a piece of beautiful jewelry, although it's all beautiful. And we do make some really awesome and beautiful pieces, but it really is more than that. We want our customers to feel validated and seen and heard through this experience in this time of their lives that is so pivotal and transformational, like we talked about earlier. And I just really think that like I feel really blessed to be able to do that for someone through a piece of jewelry, and through just a simple handwritten thank you card. And I just feel really lucky that our customers trust us and really blessed to be able to do this for people. It's a really, really beautiful thing.
Yeah, it really touched me. And, I ordered these, like I said, a couple of years ago, and I literally wear them every day. Like they're just such a big part. Breastfeeding is obviously a big part of my life. So I love that I have something tangible that I can
Yeah.
show off that I'm like, I did it, I believed in myself and I worked really hard. And this is like a treat for myself to be like, good work, mama. I love that.
I think that that's what a lot of our customers do. I actually was thinking about this a lot today, is that a lot of our customers are not just getting it as a way to commemorate their experience, but almost as like a level of like proof to yourself of your own commitment level to your baby. And even if you only breastfed your baby for one day, like we've had customers that are like, I breastfed my baby for one day. They had medical issues, XYZ. But you know what? I'm really proud of myself because I had such a strong level of love and commitment for my baby that I did every single step along the way exactly what I believed was the right thing to do, no matter how hard it was. And I need this, this piece of jewelry is like a badge of honor to show myself the level of commitment that I had to my baby. And it is a way for me to remember how rough this time was, but how I like persevered. And I think that's really special.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not so much like the length of time. I have a friend, she's had like a breast reduction and it's just been a struggle. And her goal is to make it 2 months. Like, and she's just working so hard and with donors as well, because it's just not going to be something where she's going to exclusively do herself. But
Right.
like, good for you. You're going so far out of your way. You're working so hard and already learning to be a mom it's enough, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have this like uphill like battle of not creating enough, making enough milk because there's just not the milk ducts just aren't there anymore.
Right.
Yeah. But I think it's such a fun way to be like, look what I did. And like, not like everyone knows. It's not like, hey, like, look,
In
where's the
there.
milk?
People. Yeah, I mean, we definitely have customers that are like, I want to tell everybody my breast milk's in my ring. And then we also have customers that are like, I just really love, I think it's beautiful. It looks like a little pearl on my necklace. No one has to know, but I know. I'm wearing one right now.
Yeah.
And that's special too. So just however you want to do it. But
Oh
I
yeah.
do love you. Beautiful. I'm glad you like them.
I do. Yeah, I'm that person I tell everyone. I'm like, this is my breast milk. I think it's so cool. I think it's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Maria, for joining me. I've been looking forward to this for so long. I was so excited when you got back to me. And thank you everyone listening for listening to Motherhood Guide podcast. And I will see you guys next week.